This vortex of creation, do you accept its reality? Doesn't matter if you do or not, it is reality. The larger part of you is there, even in your ignorance of it. There it is with everything you want. And this vortex, this edge of the vortex is somewhere on the emotional scale between hope and belief. That's where it is. So if you're over here in fear, you're nowhere near the vortex. And even though the vortex is calling you, it's pulling you forward. When you go from despair and the vortex gets hold of you a little bit and pulls you forward, you end up in revenge. And you say, oh, that doesn't feel very vortex-like. We say, yes, it does. It's closer. It's closer to the vortex than you were. When you allow yourself to move from revenge into hatred, and hatred into anger, and anger into less anger, into frustration, into overwhelmment. When you get in the vicinity of hope, now the vortex will take you right in and show you something to make a believer out of you. In other words, when you allow yourself to get into the vicinity of the vortex will help you to believe. So what we really want to talk about in this gathering, because most of you are not over there in despair. Most of you hang around with the low end of your vibration somewhere in the vicinity of overwhelmment. Oh, you dip into anger occasionally, sometimes despair, but your set point on your emotional scale is somewhere between overwhelmment, dipping into some anger, and hope. That's where most of you are hanging out. Occasionally you go right into the vortex, but you don't stay there very long. Your animals are not as creative as you humans. They are also much less resistant. So humans are much better at sifting through contrast and launching desires than the animals of your planet are. But the animals are much more likely to be in the vortex. So the cells of your body are more like the beasts of your planet. They are not holding grudges. That's why recovery from illness is often associated with slumber. That's why people often go into comas and recover from things otherwise. In other words, your physical apparatus really gets a head start on reclaiming vibrational balance every night that you sleep. So imagine this process. Imagine having a day that's not all that great, but getting in bed and deliberately trying to withdraw your thoughts from what was bothering you and focus upon something that you can bask about, like maybe even the comfort of your bed. And imagine falling to sleep as best you can in a sort of more basking perspective, and then slumbering where you withdraw consciousness from this physical apparatus and time-space reality. And then awakening in the morning and deliberately, and it's not hard to do, reclaiming the basking that you were in before you went to sleep and taking it further by working on some things that you appreciate. Then getting out of bed, and we'll do some focus wheels here today, doing a focus wheel or two to clean up some vibration that has been sort of raw and ragged, and then moving into a list of positive aspects and getting on a rampage of appreciation, and then moving into your day. Now, follow us here. Then the next night, doing the same, and the next night, doing the same, and the next night, doing the same. Within a very short time, far less than 30 days, we're not kidding you even a little, you could release the majority of resistance that you've been harboring, and anything that was not sitting right in your physical apparatus. In other words, you would give the cells of your body the perfect vibrational culture in which to find perfect balance, just with that one simple process. Because it is only the awakening the next morning and the returning to resistant thought that keeps your cells from reclaiming their complete balance even in one night's sleep. You following? Yep. A few nights of deliberately releasing resistance and then going into slumber and giving the cells of your body all of that time to find their balance. And then another night of releasing resistance and going into slumber. But here's the thing. Every night you do that, but every morning you undo it. That's what's happening with most people. Every night your cells find their balance, and then you remember what was bothering you the day before. So you are literally reestablishing resistance every time you come back into consciousness. Isn't that interesting? Your vortex is always calling you, and your source is always there. And when you find the feeling of it, then practice it, milk it. When you're having a good moment, Ask yourself, what are the components of this moment? Why do I feel so good? What's so lovely about this? And describe it. Use your words. Use your emotional words, but begin to practice the conversation. Affirm from inside the vortex. In fact, affirm constantly and do it all from inside the vortex. And never ever affirm from outside the vortex. When you affirm from outside the vortex, you practice the outside the vortex vibration. When you affirm from inside the vortex, you practice the inside the vortex vibration. So, you don't have to move away from anything or anyone to be in the vortex. You just have to understand that it is there. Do you? Do you believe the vortex is a reality that is there? Do you believe that it's accessible to you, by you? Do you understand that it's just a vibration away? Esther didn't get it either until recently, the momentum that could be built. She wants to get a toehold of something, just something, and then milk it and milk it and milk it and milk it and milk it until now she knows so unequivocally what it feels like to be in that vortex that nothing else is tolerable. She said to Jerry, I'm in the vortex and I'm never coming out. And then she said, don't make me come out. And out she went. But it doesn't matter because when you're out, when you've been in, you know you can get right back in. In other words, we want to make this vibrational reality so real to you that you stop giving any conversation to not being in there. Sure, a lot of you aren't in there. So what? Get in. But Abraham, I'm not in for it. So what? Get in. But you don't understand. So what? Get in. Get in. Get in. Get in. Get in. No more excuses. Get in. So you have a vortex of creation, an assembly of all things wanted, circumstances and events, other people, attitude, information, everything that is necessary to satisfy the questions you're asking, the problems you're looking for solutions for, the creations you're creating. Everything is being assembled for you. In fact, vibrationally speaking, it is done. If we can get you to accept the reality of this vibrational reality, and if we can attract your attention from the reality that you are counting as reality. In other words, you often don't want to count it until it's manifested. You don't want to count your money until it's in your bank. You don't want to count your lover till in your bed. You don't want to count your prosperity or well-being until it is manifested where all can see it. And we want you to learn to see through the eyes of Source. We want you to come into, vibrationally speaking, your vortex of creation so that you can know your prosperity in the moment that it is a vibrational reality. And once we are able to, you might say, distract you from the reality that has so much of your attention and call you into the vibrational reality that is the precursor of your next reality. When you are afraid, do you know that it does not mean that you're receiving a warning bell that says there's danger? Do you know that when you're afraid, what it means is you have thought about something and therefore activated a vibration and therefore established a vibrational pattern of such separation from who you are that empty, awful feeling that you call fear simply means your thought is not in sync with who you are. You're draining yourself. Draining isn't the right word. You are disallowing the refueling, the refilling of who you really are. But you see, it always takes effort. And let's talk about why it takes effort. And let's just tell it like it is. Focus is effort because law of attraction will hold you to your dominant vibration. So if I've been beating the drum of I don't have enough money, and I've been noticing evidence of not having enough money, and in my noticing that I don't have enough money, I activate a vibration so it keeps me in that position of not having enough money, then to think about having more money is not as easy as noticing that I don't have enough money. It takes effort to imagine beyond what is. That's really what we're talking about. It's easy. It's like it's easy to turn on the television and watch what they're offering. It's more difficult to think your own thought. It's easy to just hear what someone's saying to you. It's more difficult to guide the conversation in a more positive direction. It's easy to observe. It's more difficult to focus. And yet, there is so much more reward in focusing than there is in just observing. So, vibrationally speaking and emotionally speaking, this doorway to this vortex, this vibrational state of being, on the emotional scale is somewhere between hope and belief. In other words, if you are in despair or anger or revenge, you're nowhere near the vortex. And even though who you really are is in there and law of attraction is calling you home, you've got enough resistance going that you're not going easily. And that's what negative emotion is. Did you get that? Negative emotion is the larger part of you calling you, pulling you, but because of your resistant stance, you're not going easily. Oh, you're going. Because when you croak, in you go. You're going. You're just not going easily. And the fact that you're not going easily is why you have those hurtful, painful emotions that can even turn into illness. Resistance is only and always, only ever about, did we put enough in that to make you only ever, always ever, only, always ever. Resistance is only, always, ever, eternally about, it's only ever about you having a vibration that doesn't match what's in there. So you hold yourself out with your own thoughts, which means nobody else, not the economy, not the government, not the other political party, not the other religious groups, not the opponent on the football field, nobody, not ever, is the reason that you are not having the success that you want. Because no one can keep you out of your vortex but you. Unless you want to say, oh, they were there and I saw them. And because I saw them, I didn't allow myself into the vortex. So they really should be different because I might see them again. I don't have the ability to focus. I just look around everywhere. And I might see something that might hold me out of the vortex. So it seems to me that the best plan of action, this is what humans say, seems to me that the best plan of action would be for us to all get together and decide what the perfect one way of life is, and then we'll just make everybody be it, and then it'll be a lot easier. And we say, how is that working out? There has to be some logic that lets you know that if you need even one other person to be different so that you can get in the vortex and be a match to what you're asking for, you're going about it in the wrong way because you can't make them focus long enough. Do you have a teenager? You can't get them to hold you as their dominant intent. Isn't it, or wasn't it, maybe not for you, but many of you feel shocked that others would have the nerve to care about their life more than yours. I don't think that guy's giving me the best deal he could give me on this purchase. It's like he doesn't even care about me. And when you finally accept that every person on the planet is selfishly oriented, every person on the planet is making their way to their own vortex, and all you've got to do is find a thought that lets you in. If you have some resistance that you're wanting to replace with allowing, the more general you are, the less resistance there will be. And so the emotional description or reaching is a more general thing than the specifics. Every subject is really two subjects: wanted and lack of wanted. Wanted and absence of wanted. And so when you pick up a subject, it's going to vibrate wherever you last left it, wherever you've trained yourself to be on the subject. So sometimes when you discuss with yourself an issue, it just starts reverberating right where you last left it. And so by describing how that feels, you diffuse the specifics of it, you make it more general. By defining the emotion, even if it's the negative emotion, it's less powerful than if you describe the specifics that cause the emotion to be there. In other words, you know that from conversations you might have. Think about being with a group of people and talking about something unwanted, and then everybody starts chiming in and chiming in and chiming in. That's what mob mentality is really about. You can really get things going, and mob mentality can be unhelpful or helpful. In other words, there's a real mob over here in the vibrational reality that's rooting for you. And so you just don't want to start lighting up specifics until you're sure you're in the vortex. That's what we're hearing you say.